I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with yourself. When you think about writing your book, is the first thing that stops you the thought that your story just isn't enough? That it's not dramatic enough, not unique enough, not impressive enough for anyone to care? I thought that too. And then something shifted. Today, I'm telling you exactly what that was and how it can change everything for you too. What's going on, y'all? It's Mellissa T, the procrastination bully, and your hashtag author bestie. The Get in the Win show is for women who've navigated a trauma or transition, and I help them find healing through writing and publishing their first book. So today I want to get into that. I want to get into worthiness, like you understanding that you are indeed worthy. Your story is worthy. And I'm going to share what my journey was with that as well. In full transparency, I'm someone that has lived a relatively sheltered and protected early life. I'm the daughter of two very disciplinarian parents. Shout out to them. I love them. But because they were so careful with the way, my brother and I were raised, we never grew up in the hood. So it's not like I have any dramatic hood stories like that. We we were never truly poor. We we were typically middle class as a family, and then we did hit an economic low point when we were living in the state of Georgia in the early 90s. But even then, we were never truly poor. We were never hungry. Like, the quality of our food went down. Like, we had to rock with the no frills for a minute, but we were never hungry as a family. So in that true dramatic sense, my life had none of that. Had absolutely none of that. I was always the top of my class academically because since my parents were disciplinarians and I wanted to make sure to always stay in their good graces, and they always praised me when I performed well academically, I made sure to perform well academically. So I was always well behaved in school, always top of my class, participated in a lot of the extracurricular activities. And as you're hearing my story, I'm talking about both parents. So I didn't grow up in a single parent household. So I fell into that trap. I honestly believe that my story wasn't worth telling, that there was nothing quote unquote sexy or dramatic about it. So the way that I started telling my story was actually wrapped in fiction. So if you go to Amazon.com right now and put my name in quotes in the search, put Mellissa Thomas with two L's and two S's, put my name in quotes, you'll come across my author page and you'll see two ebooks in a series that I created called the Tenderfoot series. That was how I felt I needed to package my life story in order for it to be readable or important. I packaged it in my favorite form of writing, which is fiction. So I turned it into a sort of espionage suspense thriller where the main characters are searching for me across the world and they're having to follow clues to find me. And that the saga isn't even complete, by the way. I broke it into 5 episodes, if you will, 5 parts. And so far, episode 2 is out. So if you're ever curious about that, feel free to read that. But my point is, I've been where you are. And the difference for me, the thing that shifted for me is community. When I started working on that fictional series, I was in my mid 20s. Okay, so I had just wrapped up my master's degree at Full Sail University, my entertainment business master's degree. And so I was working a 9 to 5 at the time. I was working in the financial aid department, specifically with veterans affairs. My life seemed kind of run the mill, kind of boring to me. And so I felt the need to package it in that fictional way. And while I had friends in college, I had schoolmates, they weren't necessarily on that same wavelength. We were all in the process of creating our respective businesses in the industry. So I didn't necessarily have anyone to bounce those ideas off of that could provide professional feedback. So that was my struggle. That was, we're talking 2010 roughly. Okay? Like 2009, 2010, that era. Fast forward to 2025. 15 years later, with the SpongeBob voice and everything. 15 years later, I am in community now. I first joined the community in 2023, but it was in 2025 that I understood fully what I had to offer the world and how to package that in the form of a book that I could then publish and turn around and give to the world. That book is in process now. It's called the Pain to Prose Playbook. You guys have heard me talking about it since the beginning of the year and actually since last year. So that book has been in process. It's been cooking for a while. And now I have a definitive launch date. It's going to be August 1st, 2026. As of this recording, that's 3 months away. And I'm fresh off the heels of the author activation weekend, so I can speak definitively about this. Because not only did I teach the authors who attended the weekend what they needed to learn to publish their book, but because of the amazing speakers we had for that weekend in Tennessee, I received the knowledge that I needed to confidently launch my book. So now I have a definitive launch date. All of my writing blocks, all of my limiting beliefs are banished because of what I was able to receive and experience over that weekend in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. So shout out to all the amazing speakers who poured into us that weekend. But because I entered into community starting in 2023, I joined ET's YoU Mastermind. I became connected to the amazing speakers that I had for the author activation weekend. I had the privilege of inviting them with the help of the mastermind, like through my connections in the mastermind, to pour into the authors for the weekend and to pour into me for the weekend. I developed my voice while in the mastermind, came to understand the value that I provide to the folks in the mastermind, because a lot of them are either coaches, consultants, or aspiring authors, or they're first time or second time authors and they're looking forward to their next book, and understood my value to help them publish that next book. So being in a community where I was valued built up my confidence so that I could tell my story of the very first book I published and what that process was, and the evolution that I experienced from my first book to the 8th book, which is a journal. My first book is a 52-week devotional called From a Babe. That one was a godly assignment. No human being requested it. It was a directive from the Lord himself, because I was 2 years full of Bible study. Shout out to Grace Bible Church of Central Florida in Orlando. That's a church I still attend, even now. And at that time, I was fresh out of the Navy and was very spiritually hungry to learn more about God's word, because up until that point in my life, I've been shouted at. We've been in churches where we were getting hollered at, like the word was being, shouted at us, and in a way that I couldn't absorb and learn from and grow from. So I was hungry to actually learn the word in a way that would stick and in a way that I could apply to my life. And Grace Bible Church was the first place that I was able to do that, because not only do I sit under a pastor who's a former seminary professor, so he knows how to teach, but additionally, because he values both evangelism and discipleship, our church has tons of Bible studies that we're able to participate in on a weekly basis. And I grew a lot from participating in those Bible studies. So 2 years into that, the Lord was like, okay, it's time to turn this around into a book now that you can put out into the world so that other people can learn from you what you've learned from the word. And so he gave me the beginnings of a system. The current framework I use, the F5 framework, is very different from what he gave me, but he still gave me a system. First, he told me the format of the book, a weekly devotional for a year. So 52 weeks, right? So right away, that's 52 Bible verses I was going to have to find. Bet. That was the first priority. Individually choose those 52 scriptures. The next thing he had me do was cluster the verses into categories based on what the verses were about. because he guided me to the verses. I didn't randomly choose them. Once I analyzed the verses and what they were about, what they touched on, I was able to cluster them into sections, into categories. Those categories became the sections in the devotional. So I have, for instance, a section on preparing for battle. And then I have another section on the armor of God, which is spiritual warfare, right? So I have a section on spiritual warfare, the armor of God, one section on preparing for spiritual warfare, one section on the seven deadly sins. So I had 7 scriptures that each spoke to each of the 7 deadly sins, and then so on and so forth. So first, knowing the format of the book, since I knew it was 52 weeks, the next thing, 52 scriptures. The next thing, categorize the scriptures, which then become the sections of the book. Once all of that was situated, the next thing I needed to do, since God knew I was a poet, he assigned me to create 52 original poems. And this was inspired by the Daily Bread books. If you've ever received any of the Daily Bread devotionals, my family does. And some of the devotional entries have original poems in there, or not original, but poems from other writers, I mean. And since God knew that I was already a poet, he said, in the same way you saw that in the Daily Bread, create your own. Don't quote another poet. Create your own poems. So that was the next piece, 52 original poems. Once the scripture was assigned at the top, the relevant poem was attached at the bottom. All that was left for me to now do was flesh out the devotional texts for each of the verses. So I wrote those, and that became the From a Babe weekly devotional. I used Microsoft Word to create it, and I was not an expert. This was a DIY book. I learned how to format the pages myself, absolutely butchered pages. If you ask me to format a book now, I can do a much better job because I've since learned how to use Adobe InDesign, and I can better format the pages in Microsoft Word because I'm well familiar with downloading the Amazon KDP interior templates. So I know where to find the resources. That very first book I did ugly. You've likely heard that kind of advice. Do it ugly. You know what I mean? And the key is not for the purposes of being reckless and just putting ugly stuff out in the world. The reason why you likely heard that so much is just to get past the block of procrastination. The hardest thing in execution is getting past the initial inertia, like the block of starting. Because once you start, you can get into a flow. And once you get into a flow, you build momentum, and you can use that momentum all the way to completion, which is exactly what I did with the From a Babe book. I honestly can't even tell you how long it took anymore because I don't remember, but I can tell you it took less than a year. It took less than 6 months. Like that wasn't a long writing process for me because the beauty is it's a devotional. And if you've ever looked at any devotional books, they're not long-winded. These are not books that have heavy chunks of writing in them. Some books are daily devotionals, some are weekly, some are 40-day, some are 21-day. Devotional books are typically brief. So it didn't take long to write. So if that's something you're concerned with in terms of your worthiness as well, maybe you're saying, well, who's going to take my story seriously? Or I don't have enough to write about. Let this be a bit of encouragement for you. Your book doesn't have to be long. You can package your book as a guide, something where you're extracting lessons from what your experiences have been, and then turning the lessons around to give to everyone else, which is exactly what the Pain to Prose playbook is going to be. I'm not sharing my entire life story in that book. I don't have enough to fill that in a way that's sexy or exciting. But because that book has a direct and specific focus on helping women who've gone through a trauma or transition heal by writing and publishing their first book, I can speak to that because I've been through a few traumas and transitions. No, I didn't have the single parent household. No, I didn't grow up poor or grow up in a dangerous city or a violent place or No, by the grace of God, I didn't grow up in an abusive household. And, you know, prayers and definitely empathy for those who have. And if that's your story, definitely empathy and respect for you. But that's not my story, so that's not something I could package in a book. What I can package is my experience in self-publishing 8 books and how to leverage my traumas and transitions into a book that can be published and used to help other people. So I wrote based on what I know. Let this be the encouragement for you. Write based on what you know. Write based on what you know. Extract the lessons from what you've actually experienced. Even if you feel like no one's going to take you seriously, or if you feel like your story isn't exciting enough or impressive enough, your expertise is still needed out here. 8.2 billion people are in the world, and 4 billion out of that have internet access. Your target reader is out there somewhere. They're on Amazon with $15 ready to spend on a book, or more accurately, 20, because the market is showing that the average nonfiction book runs between $18.99 and $25.99. They have that at the ready to purchase a book that they don't see yet, because so far you haven't written it. So let this episode, let my voice to you be your permission to package your expertise in a book that they can read and use and grow from. In the same way that you've grown, they can grow too. Your experience is not exclusive to you. My favorite book says all of our experiences are specifically so that we can help another person. We can assist another person that is going through the same thing that we've gone through, are going through, or will go through. Our experiences are meant to assist them and give them hope so that they know that they're not alone. And as Lupita Nyong'o recently shared, she's been very open and transparent about her process with fibroids, her journey with fibroids. For her birthday, she wanted to let the audience know how to support her. Instead of buying a gift, she wanted them to donate money to fibroids research, to increase fibroids research, and to make the conversation about fibroids and fibroid treatment more public, more mainstream. And what she said was, when she was speaking to Sarah Jakes Roberts on Sarah's podcast, we heal when we hear stories and when we share them. And she's absolutely right. We heal when we share our own stories, and we heal when we hear them. Because we as human beings in general are inherent storytellers. Before books were a thing, before the printing press was ever invented, that is how our clans, our families would survive. We would pass down stories. How did we learn how to do stuff that we didn't know how to do? Oral stories. We heal from our traumas and transitions by sharing them. We heal from our traumas and transitions by hearing stories of other people who have been through the same thing. And we then take and apply what they shared. And we apply it to our own lives. This same thing is true for you. Whatever your story looks like, it is worthy of being told. The lessons you've learned from your story, even if it's boring, even if it's unsexy, even if it's unexciting, the lessons you've learned from your story, the lessons you can extract from your life experiences are worth sharing. They're worth packaging and giving to someone else. There's a book called The Business of Expertise. I strongly recommend that. And shout out to Liz J. Simpson for recommending it to us. And there are plenty of books in the world like that. But if you've ever wondered if your story is worthy of sharing, I promise you it is. Mine is boring. You heard what my backstory is. I didn't develop the quote unquote dramatic or sexy things in my life until my mid-30s. Because at that point, I had entered into an industry that is fast-paced and high stress. And I learned a lot of things about myself that I wasn't prepared to learn. And I realized how unprepared I was to face the world, because previously my life was relatively easy. I served in the Navy, very structured. Yeah, there are some experiences that will try your patience, but Navy life is a relatively structured lifestyle. You know where you're going to be, you know exactly when you need to be there. All your clothes are the same because it's a uniform. You have very strict rules, and you just follow them. You're around the same people all the time, and then you move from duty station to duty station every so often. Easy peasy. The toughest thing about the Navy life was boot camp, and that was only a few months long. I could write a whole story about that too. But for me, my drama or the exciting parts didn't hit until my mid 30s. The health journey that I experienced didn't hit until my late 30s. So if that is a concern for you as well, and sort of bonus underlying thing where you're thinking it's too late for me, you know, I'm past my prime. Whatever portion of my life would have been interesting or exciting, that's gone now. That's not true. And there are plenty of examples like that. The most popular one is Colonel Sanders. He was in his 60s when KFC blew up as a business. Like, timing is important. There are certain stories you cannot tell until you're more mature and mature enough to tell them. Because certain traumas or transitions, some people will bleed on the page, and bleeding on the page that isn't necessarily what your reader needs. Your reader needs to see that you are whole, that you have dressed and sealed the wound before you turn around and share it with them. So if you're ever concerned about your story being worthy, being boring, if anybody will take it seriously, that you're past your prime, or that it's too late for you to tell it, none of those things apply. Let's get your story out. If this episode was beneficial to you, be sure to check out this video here about the beginnings of the writing process. I want to take you through it step by step, and then check out the playlist here so you can watch the whole thing from beginning to end, from ideation to publication. I'm Mellissa T, your procrastination bully and your hashtag author bestie. Subscribe here on YouTube at Getting the Win. And be sure to tune in next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time for another value-packed and engaging episode. But in the meantime, in between time, hope you have a great and productive rest of your Wednesday and a great and productive rest of your week. Peace.